just creating the space. Like you're doing so much for the community, and I think that people are going to appreciate it, that you're offering so much and bringing so much to the poetry community. So thank you.
Thank you. And also, like, I'm just inspired to do it. Like, I could be doing something else, but maybe I just, maybe probably do a podcast with you where the things we speak about, probably might like help somebody else or inspire somebody else.
No.
That's the purpose.
But my name is Jasmine. My middle name is Jhane. So that's why I chose that for my poetry, my name for my poetry. But yeah, I live in Atlanta. I'm originally from Las Vegas, Nevada, but I've lived in Atlanta for since 2012. I work with in a nonprofit working with older adults, and that's what I got my master's degree in gerontology to work with older adults. So that's kind of what I do outside of this. And then as it relates to my writing, I love using prompts and I love connecting with writers on Instagram. I found such a great community on here. So when I started posting my writing, I just met so many people and been able to connect through words. So it's been really an amazing, wonderful journey. It's been so exciting. And you get to, it's people from all over the world. You just get to meet so many cool people.
Yeah, and there's so much scope of, interaction and doing podcasts or lives or, conversations like this.
Exactly.
So, like, you are also a musician, right?
I am. Yes, I do write
Yeah.
songs, sing, and dabble with the guitar. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you're basically a songwriter or do you play?
Both.
Both. Okay. And where can we like, find your music?
Ooh, so I have a SoundCloud. It's linked in my bio. I think if you look up, I changed my name to Sin City Records because I'm from Vegas and I
Yeah.
sing City Records. But if you type in like Sin City Records, I think it should come up in SoundCloud. And I also have songs on like all streaming platforms like Spotify, iTunes. I haven't changed my name on there, so it's under J. Jhane, Jhane. If you look on streaming platforms, but that's
Okay.
in my bio. That's where my SoundCloud is linked.
Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering actually, what does it mean, Sin City Records and Jazzy Jazz, right?
Yeah,
It's in your bio. Yeah,
yeah.
so that's your artist name.
Yeah, so Sin City Records is my artist name, what I use for singing. I was using J Janae, so the first letter of my first name and my middle name, but I kind of changed it so I have this Janae for my poetry, and then Sin City Records is related to my music, and then Jazzy Jazz is just a nickname.
Yeah, yeah. I was always wondering, like, yeah, so you're Jasmine, that's your real name, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So, like because the reason I asked you about music is because most of us already know like you are a poet, and we have read your poetry, and it's really like it's beautiful. Hence, we are here talking about it. So, I just wanted to know like the difference between like how similar and different it is, being a poet and a musician
Ooh, that's a
at the
great.
same time.
Um, I think it's a lot of similarities in writing, so writing music and writing poetry. I think, you know, writing it's really similar because poetry is like I'm writing about what I'm feeling and what's going on in my life and my heart and around me, and it's the same with music. I think the difference is really just that one has like a beat or an instrumental to it. Um, but I think when I started, so I did music first before I would consider myself, a writer. And when I started off doing music and then transitioning into poetry, I had to kind of force myself to get away from rhyming with everything. Because that's just something that I feel like a lot of people do in music. And in poetry, you can have free verse or you can have, just all these different forms where it doesn't have to rhyme. So that's been a thing that I've been challenging myself with to get into that a little bit more. But I feel like it's very similar in the writing aspect. Now, of course, when you get into like singing, I guess I could kind of be compared to spoken word, but one is like holding a tune and like hitting the right note. The other one is more of like focusing on your intonation and things like that. So yeah, I feel like it's similar. Like one can lend itself to the other, but also has a lot of differences.
Yeah. And like, have you performed, live?
As far as music or poetry or both?
Yeah, both. Yeah.
Um, I have done some singing live. And I was in chorus when I was in like high school and stuff like that. So I sang with like a group. I've not done poetry. I think I did do a poetry reading like on a Zoom, but I haven't done a
Yeah.
whole live. I would like to get more into it though.
Yeah, because because you're a musician, you're a performer, right? So
Yeah.
I think it will be very easier for you to even, go into spoken word as well because it's a little similar to, So yeah,
Yeah.
and it's very interesting. Like I want to know more about your music
Hmm.
and what style of music is it? What's the genre?
Ooh, that's a great question. I would say I do a lot of R&B, rhythm and blues. Um, Yeah, I think I do that mostly, more so than anything else. Yeah, that would be probably the genre I would say.
Yeah. And does that like is it have you found yourself when you write poetry, echoing your genre of music while you're like, writing even your poetry? Do they like somewhere down the line assimilate or, get inspired by each other, the poet bit and the musician bit?
That's really a great question. I don't really think about it when I write, like when I'm writing music, when I'm writing poetry, thinking about the other one, but I feel like I do write a lot about like love and heartbreak.
Yeah.
I don't know, I guess that's kind of becoming my brand of what I write about, but I think in both music and poetry, I really do talk a lot about both of those because I feel like those are common emotions that we all experience, these cycles of love and then like being hurt. So I take from that a lot.
I think if suppose a very, strict question, but would you identify yourself as a musician first or a poet first?
Ooh, question. Um, I guess I would say I feel like I'm more in tune to my poetry and writing now, but I get into kind of cycles. So there'll be times where I'm very heavily like I want to write, like I'm into poetry and I'm in that mode and I'm inspired. And other times I'm like I want to do music and I want to sing and I want to make these videos. So I guess I would say it kind of depends on the time period and like where I'm at in my life at that time. But right now, I guess I would say more so into the poetry zone.
Yeah, and you have a book, right? Which is also about, yeah, tell us about it.
Yes, I do have a book. It's on Amazon. It's actually under my real name, Jasmine Joyner. I think
Yeah.
when I start doing books now, I'll start doing them all under like my poetry name. So making that transition is a thing, but I think I'll start doing that. But yeah, it's called Compositions, Sinking, Floating, Sailing, and it's available on Amazon. I wrote it last year, last August, I believe, and it is about love and heartbreak too. It's so the sinking section has to do with a lot of like negative emotions like depression and heartbreak and just all of the kind of negative feelings. The floating is kind of more about like relationships, I would say. A lot of the poems are about relationships and kind of just that middle ground of it not being super negative, but also not being super positive. And then the floating section is about positivity and growth and hope and all of the good light feelings.
Yeah, more like you've been through it all tonight, enlightened, and you're like floating, like it doesn't
Yeah.
affect you anymore. I think, yeah, I love it. Love the title. But I really honestly love the name of your book and the way you've described it. It makes me want to read it because, like the process of not just, love and relationships, but even in life, we're going through so much, like, in terms
Yeah.
of career and
Oh,
everything. And yeah, and the three stages you described, it's so true. Like this is what we go through. Like first we sink, then we kind of get through, and then finally we're like, okay, we're done. It doesn't affect me anymore. So yeah, that's a great way to even divide a book into different parts.
thank you so
And it's
much.
a poetry book, right?
I would say poetry and maybe even some prose short stories, but majority of it is poetry.
So, like, my one more question was like, with all everything happening, the pandemic, and how important is it? Like, how does poetry and music, because you are into music, the arts can make an impact in bringing for change or probably bettering. I wouldn't say bettering the world, but probably making an impact. Do you believe in that, or what do you think?
Yeah, so I really believe that. So the question is how our music
Yeah.
poetry.
how poetry, music, or the arts, like, do you think that they have, poetry and music and the arts have the power to make an impact and bring forth change in terms of even socio-political stuff?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I am big on kind of like interdisciplinary stuff. So a lot of drawing in all of these different avenues to get a point across. I mean, we see in art, like take Guernica, Picasso, that was a very political piece, but it was art. Um,
Yeah.
we have a lot of songs that have been written about just things going on. I thought the first thing that came to mind for whatever reasons, Maren Morris. I think it's called Better Than We Found It. I love that song. But
Okay.
a lot
Okay.
of different avenues, writing, spoken word, music, poetry, art. The arts are very socio-political, I feel, or have the ability to be depending on how the artist puts themselves into the work, or what their intentions are with it. So I definitely think that it can lend itself to all of these different movements. I worked with the United Nations Association of the United States of America a couple of times, and as an ambassador I got to host a what was it called, it was a sustainable fashion week, and I talked to a woman who did storytelling with saris, and put saris into her art, and we talked about how political that is, and how we talked doing a sustainable fashion, and recycling the saris and using that in the artwork, how it lends itself to discussing climate change and climate action. So I definitely feel like the arts and really other fields can combine and come together to talk about these important issues and to raise awareness. So I would definitely say yes to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely believe, like, you might be knowing about like poetry, Earthlings, for example, one of my nature poetry pages. Although I started it like, just to appreciate nature poetry. In like, honestly, it was just about having a place to, come together, especially people who love nature and poetry, and just, talk about it and have fun. But I have realized, over time, is that when there are important events like Earth Day, for example, or World Environment Day, or it was a Tiger Day recently, it's like when we're talking about it, like even if we're appreciating writing poetry and appreciation, it's still we are actually making people aware of the things going on and
Yeah.
raising awareness, right? I completely believe, and what you said, so true. Like, we have always used very like policy oriented, very, so okay, I would say like institutional designs and stuff
Yeah.
to combat, say, climate change, or even social political issues like, say, with the Ukraine war, or the instabilities that keeps going on, and but I feel like what I have seen in, in my own experience, even while engaging in for a year right here in, in Instagram, is that when there's some issue and people actually they write poetry, and nobody's asking them, to write about the issue, but they do it because, we are watching the news and it impacts us.
Yeah.
And yeah, and we use poetry to, express. And when we are expressing, I have learned, like, for example, when the Afghanistan crisis was there, I met a couple of poets who were from they were Afghan,
Yeah.
and they were talking about their experience in the country, and via poetry. So, I got to know a lot through them, and they were like first person accounts. So interesting, right? Like what you
Yeah.
said.
It is.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I love that too. I think when you talked about the Ukraine war and when all that took place, I did see people, both Ukrainian and just people, around the world, who were witnessing this, taking to poetry and posting in and talking about what was going on and how that was making them feel, because we are impacted by what we see on the news. We are impacted by what we hear that's happening and taking place in the world, even if we're not directly impacted. And we can see that in our art that comes alive, and we use our art to kind of express ourselves and share those feelings, but also share, about these important historical things that are taking place, and our thoughts on war and all those things. And I think that that's so beautiful with poetry, that, like you said, no one is saying like go out there and write about this, but people are like, this is,
yeah,
so let me put this out there to share how I'm feeling about it and why this is not okay. And other people are feeling it too, so it's like they're connecting with other people and connecting with their work through that. So I just love that about art. I love that about art.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, truly. And music.
yeah.
Because, like, yeah, I have, like, got to know about sometimes, the social situation in a country if I listen to their music. I want to know, like, how important is it for you to live a life that you love? And even if, living that life you love may not be like, say, a standard successful life initially, like, when you're following a passion.
Mhm.
So initially it might feel like maybe, things are so uncertain or the money isn't coming in instantly. So
Yeah.
how important is it for you still to, do what you love? What's your definition of success?
That's great. It is important for me to love my life, and it is important for me. I feel like people chase money a lot, especially in American culture. I don't know about other cultures, but in American culture, it is a very money hungry, like, you gotta get the money, you gotta get the money. And life is expensive, so I get it. But I also think it's important to do things that you love, because who wants to go to a job every day that they hate, or to do something every day that they really don't enjoy? Like, that just, it's kind of like soul sucking. And I'm a very soul driven person. Like, I like to pursue my passions and then pursue what feels good to my soul, and what makes me feel good and happy within. So that's very important to me. I would say my definition of success. So someone once said, I can't remember his name now because this was like way back in high school, but I think it was a bishop, and he once said something along the lines of, success is not only when you've made it to your goal, but it's when you're still trying and taking those steps to make it. And I think that's beautiful, because I think a lot of people think success is something that you have to reach. And I think that
Yeah,
successful as long as you're taking those steps forward and continuing to try and strive for what you love. And I also don't think
yeah,
that success has an end. I think that you could still be achieving and growing and doing better, as long as you're here. So I just think it's a continuous thing that you're striving toward, but that you love, that you're happy about, and that you're giving yourself grace along the way, because I think that's really important
yeah.
about what you're doing. And I think that that's what's driving me the most, even in the hard times. It's just my passion and the drive to do all these things. There are times where I'm like, man, I really wish I could just give up, or like, what's the point? Or But then I see people around me who are not being defeated, or who are getting back up even after defeat. And it's like, you made it this far, you can keep going. And that, and my passions definitely helped me to get out of bed in the morning. So having this poetry
Yeah.
class has definitely been a really positive thing for me. And I'm just excited for you to grow in this.
And because I believe like when we're a writer or a poet or even a creative person, and like whatever we do in life, when you're traveling and everything, it somewhere inspires the creator in us. Does it happen? Like, did
Yeah.
your trip abroad, somewhere abroad, inspire the writer in you?
You know what? I really didn't start writing poetry until, what was that, like 2020, late in 2020, when
Okay.
I started to get serious and write poetry, and when I created this page. But when I was abroad, I did write music, and songs. So yes, I guess I
Okay.
did inspire as far as writing, but in like my musical arena, as opposed to my poet's arena.
With this podcast as well, I already told you, I think it's called being an earthling.
Yeah.
So I just giving a brief, like, I believe that like gives me like perspective, and I think that we are here on this planet briefly, which is true.
It
And
is.
yeah, and I love travel. So for me, I look at it from that point of view as if I'm a traveler on a trip, and this life is a trip. So when we are traveling, we always inspired, like we are looking at the good things. We're not focused on the, what you call it, the pettiness or the things that bother us so much, but
Yeah.
rather like, okay, what is the good thing, especially nature wise, more like, oh, it's a beautiful place we admire and appreciate, and that comes down in forms of creativity, right? It could be poetry for some, music for others, or any other art form, right? So that's the being an earthling, concept. So the reason I felt like, we should have this conversation, I believe, is because I felt like you are a very dynamic creator. Like, you not just writing poetry, but you also are into music, and like the avenues that you create. Like, what inspires you create creativity in you? What inspires you to keep creating all
That's
that you do?
Before I get into the question, I want to say I really love how you explain that we are here, temporarily, and that this is like a trip, and how we have to love the earth and love the planet, and nature is a big part of like this trip and this journey that we're on. And I do think we have to do a much better job of taking care of the planet, myself included. But um, just yeah, that got me thinking about that. So thank you for that. As far as the question, what inspires me? Well, I would say that everything around me inspires me. I don't take anything lightly. Like you said, we're here temporarily, so it is about living in the moment, which is something that I'm practicing a lot more because I am a person who tends to like think forward, and I'm like, well, enjoy the now, like be present in this space. So I think that just being in this world and taking note and paying attention to all the things around me. So whether I'm walking outside and I'm in nature and I see birds, or I've seen a hawk over here a lot.
Nice.
There are lots of trees in Georgia. So seeing all the trees and being by the lake, if so being in nature, or if I'm inside and I'm having a conversation with someone, if I'm talking to my grandma, if I'm spending time with my dog, and just so many things can inspire me. I feel inspired a lot of times through music, like listening to lyrics, and watching shows. I hear something and I'm like, ooh, that inspires me. If I'm in a conversation with a friend and we're talking about something and I'm like, oh, that would be a good topic or something to write about because, it struck me in this way and like I felt that. So I'm very in tune emotionally with my feelings and with my intuition. And so I kind of pay attention to things that strike me and that, make me feel aware that, just get my gears turning. So just anything really inspires me that's around me.
Yeah, sounds interesting when you talk about like when you're watching a show and the music hits. Like, I think that's a sign of how passionate you are about music and creativity. Like, while we are talking about doing what we love in the creative process, what is the part of your creative process that you love the most?
This is an amazing question because I haven't thought about this one. Wow. You're part of the creative process. Well, poetry, I really like. I don't do this. My grandmother and I would write poetry together, or short stories or whatever
Ooh,
writing. But yeah, based on prompts, and we would like share with each other, and it wouldn't always be like good, but it's a nice way to kind of take a prompt. What One thing I love about art is that you could give everybody the same topic and they would all come back with something different. Like that's amazing.
yeah,
So that's what
yeah.
just to hear and see how she took a prompt versus how I took a prompt, and taking inspiration in that moment. So that's one of my processes creatively when writing poetry that I love. And in music, I love when I can hear like an instrumental and then I can like kind of connect with it and say, oh, like play around with what words I would put to the instrumental and what way I would arrange it and how I would sing it and where I would layer the harmonies, and just kind of thinking through all of these things, because
Yeah.
it can be so many things as well depending on the artist and what they want to layer onto it. So I think it's just the kind of stage of like really just getting started and kind of thinking about all the possibilities of what something could be. Even though you don't go with all of them, that just you have all these ideas that are kind of going around in your head.
If you can, share some inspirations of yours, like role models,
Role
do you
model.
have?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes, I would say in my immediate life, my grandmother is a big role model for me. I mean, we're very close. She's a
yeah.
very and she's a very courageous person, and I feel like she doesn't let stuff get her too down. And even if it does, like she will bounce right back and keep going. And I think that that's something that I admire in her, and I want more of that fight and drive in myself. And so she inspires me to kind of have that and carry on. So that's like a tangible kind of, well, I guess everybody's tangible, but she's like in my immediate life. Like I can see
Yeah.
her and things like that. As far as other role models, I really love Dana Delaney. I've discovered her from watching Desperate Housewives. Uh,
Okay.
this was in 2020, so I've been a fan of
Yeah.
hers for 2 years now, which is actually very short when you think about it. But I love her heart. She's just always talking about issues. Like she uses her platform to speak out for things that she's for and against things that she's not for. And she
Mhm.
also writes, so she's written some very
Yeah.
great. She did a very great, I think it was a feature article on Miss Gloria Graham, which is one of her favorite actresses. Um, and she's written other pieces. She,
Yeah.
of course, is an actress, so she's been in all these movies and she plays all these interesting roles. She's just a very interesting person, a great person, and she always inspires me just to, stand up for what I believe in and to be completely and totally myself unapologetically. I think that she does that a lot. She's also very
Yeah.
so I love her. There are so many people I could like go down the list and say a whole bunch of people who inspire me because there are many. Um,
Yeah.
but those are just to name a couple.
Yeah. Yeah. I think inspiration sometimes, it comes from unexpected places, and I've realized. Yeah. And
It,
people as well. Yeah, and with social media, I think there's so much going on. Like sometimes, you don't know some random person, just an artist, like inspires you. That's
yeah,
that's the best thing.
yeah.
Yeah,
Do you feel like you're inspired by the people who interact with you on your page and like who write art, poetry, like under your posts? Do you ever get like an idea from those poems?
yeah, I do. I do. Actually, especially with poetry Earthlings, it's like every time, I go out and I read nature poetry, and the poems that inspire me, like they do inspire me. Like I always go for poetry which leaves an impact, like it clicks, I'm reading it and there's some kind of, I feel good. So for me, that was the purpose I created Poetry Earthlings. The poetry I read or the people I interact with, they inspire me in certain ways and they leave an impact. Hence, it's like putting my energy on it.
Yeah,
Otherwise not.
that's
Because there's so much, yeah, there's so much stuff out there, Instagram. You have to filter, and everything affects you in different ways. So for me, even with Poetry Earthlings, the idea was about having a space where I feel like, okay, yeah, this is uplifting, this is something which is adding. So yes, definitely. And every day, like new people, for like you're also challenging me. Sometimes, you feel like, okay, maybe you see something new and
yeah.
okay, I need to give this a shot. Like when I'm talking about inspiration, do you have like a favorite quote or a philosophy that you wanted to share?
That's great. It's not exactly an answer to the question, but one of my favorite poems is Phantom of Delight by William Wordsworth. I
Okay.
think it's a really beautiful poem.
Yeah. I
Dedicated.
think Wordsworth is the ultimate nature poet. Like
Yeah,
he's,
yeah, he,
yeah.
yeah. Um, but he wrote this about I think his love and um,
Oh,
you'll see some
okay.
like I feel like there's
Yeah.
some nature inspiration in there, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It was really beautiful. I think just to have somebody dedicate that to you and to see you in that light is really beautiful. As far as
Yeah.
I used to love this quote back in high school, and I don't know if I'm gonna remember it exactly, but to go back to success, it said the recipe for success is to um, work while others are loafing and dream while others are wishing, and it had like a lines. I can't remember who wrote it or the full thing, but I used to love it because it was like, you have this desire, but you kind of got to put some work behind it too. So it's kind of like equal parts, like we talked about the balance of like, yes, have this
Yeah.
dream, have this wish, have this desire, but also like work for it and continue to strive for it and go for it. So I don't know. I always love that quote.
So I want to know, like, you have joined our foundation. What is it about? If you can tell us.
Yeah, so I've kind of been telling
Yeah.
people kind of taking a back seat this year that we haven't really done a lot with it. I've just been so busy and I wanted to kind of take a step back to reevaluate the foundation. But I started it in 2017. It was January 2017, and I was in undergrad, my first year of undergrad. So exciting. And it's really an organization. It's pretty family run. We're not 501(c)(3) certified. We are incorporated, but
Okay.
organization that our goal is really to help as many people as humanly possible. And my grandmother kind of came up with that motto. So that's the motto we've been using. We changed it from making the world a better place to helping as many people as humanly possible. Because I
Yeah.
really kind of hones in on what we're actually trying to do, and that, you know, we can't help the world, but we can help a few people, and that creates a ripple effect in and of itself. But we have many projects. We've done like a local cleanup in Atlanta that's always really fun. So we'll just we usually go to one place that's the same, and then we'll pick a second kind of different location, and we'll clean up
Yeah,
and come out and help us clean up, which has been really fun. We've done art parties with Children's Healthcare of
yeah.
Atlanta. We've done a couple of scholarships, book scholarships for those going to college in the US. So we've done quite a bit of wonderful things on a small scale, but like I'm very proud of all that we've done, and the impact that we made, and kind of leaving our mark in the places that we've been able to leave them. So it's been a beautiful ride. Too. I wanted to tell you I really love your page and how you connect with people, and you offer a space where people can come and create with your prompts, and just, you know, when you're offering people this space to come together and to write and to connect with each other and to share what we're writing about, like you mentioned Tiger Day, because I remember participating in that and just being able to experience other people's writing too. So it was just, I just think your page is so amazing, and it does talk about nature and earth and all the things that are important, and how we interact with the earth and how the earth impacts us. And I just think it's so amazing that you have this space where all the writers can come together to create together.
Thank you. It means so much. I think together we create like it's possible. It won't be possible without like all of us coming together. It's a community. So I'm grateful that you love that and you chose to be a part of it. So
Yeah.
thank you.